They said I was a fool! A fool! They said it couldn't be done, that it shouldn't be done. But I'll show them. I am on the cusp of something great! Oh, hello. During this time of colder days and longer nights, I like to think of the spooky tales of old.
Personally, my favourite has always been the story of Dr. Frankenstein and his lumbering, innocent beast of a creation. Last Halloween, I sort of made a video about Frankenstein and how it was the doctor who was the real monster all along.
Yes, I know, I am very big-brained. But now I want to take a deeper dive into the story of Frankenstein, what it means, how it's been adapted, and mostly the relationship between the scientist and his creation. Spooky.
The tale of how Frankenstein came to be was just as gothic and dramatic as the book itself. It was a dark and stormy night, and at the Villa Diodata in Geneva, a collection of icons from the Gothic Romantic period were entertaining themselves by telling each other scary stories. Percy Shelley, a poet. John William Polidori, a physician. Claire Clairmont, a governess. Lord Byron,
Who was... well, he was something, wasn't he?
and Mary Godwin, who the world would know as Mary Shelley, author of one of the most famous horror novels ever written. After a night of pretending to be the proto-version of the Midnight Society, all retired to bed and Mary had a terrifying nightmare.
I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life.
I don't want to know what part of my subconscious that came from. She had a terrifying nightmare and she thought to herself, you know what, that sounds like a good yarn.
So she finished writing Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, in less than a year, and she got it published less than a year after that.
She wrote Frankenstein inside of 2 years, and it takes me over a month to do one of these videos. That's fine, that's fine.
And so the creature was released upon the world. And then Victor and his monster headed for Hollywood. Officially, there have been approximately 6 bajillion adaptations of Frankenstein, including Hammer Horror, the Kenneth Branagh version, satire and parodies, and more recent reimaginings. Oh, we'll get to you. But the version that codified the idea of Frankenstein in popular culture was definitely the 1931 Universal version, with Boris Karloff as the gentle giant unaware of his own strength that became the standard idea when people think of Frankenstein's monster.
So now I'm going to pedantically comment on everything that's wrong with it.
Okay, I over-exaggerate here. I'm not really going through every element of the book that has been lost in translation. Because 1, we don't have the time for all that. That's a video in and of itself. And 2, it's not really that important. We're just gonna define a few things to compare and contrast and see where Hollywood took liberties. 1. How the monster is made. In the 1931 movie, and plenty of subsequent films, Frankenstein collects parts of recently deceased corpses with his assistant, Igor. I guess the studio felt it would be more horrifying than in the book.
Because, you see, in the book, the creature is made...
not completely unfair criticism of the book is that the reader is never privy to how exactly Frankenstein went about putting together the creature's body. In one paragraph, there is no monster. In the next, Monsterpalooza. This gap has led to speculation as to what Mary Shelley saw in her own mind's eye, filling in this part, creating theories of what she would have been aware of in the field of natural sciences and the revolutionary discoveries happening in biology at the time. Even if Shelley was alive today, you can never truly know another person's heart, so we never truly know their intent. All we can do is apply our own interpretations onto it. Like me, for example. The way I explained it in my mind's eye was an updated reimagining of the myth of Prometheus. Yeah, remember the alternative title? Anyway. An 1800s vision of how, as Prometheus moulded man from clay, the modern Prometheus, Frankenstein, moulded his creation using science and expanding knowledge of the natural world around us.
That is just an opinion. A scientist's opinion. But apparently we're not listening to those anymore.
How the creature looks. Now, I am definitely not going to take anything away from Boris Karloff's performance as the creature, or the genius of the costume design that added intimidating height and a broadness to Karloff's frame, or the terrific work of makeup artist Jack Pierce, who created a face that could, without words, communicate the horror and the sadness. But let's just hear how Mary describes her baby.
His limbs were in proportion, and I had selected his features as beautiful. Beautiful. Great God. His yellow skin scarcely covered the work of the muscles and arteries beneath. His hair was of lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of pearly whiteness. But these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes, that seemed almost the same colour as the dun white sockets in which they were set, his shriveled complexion and straight black lips.
So according to Victor, his creation is very sex-horrifying.
So the creature had more in common with Loki in the first Avengers movie than with Boris Karloff. The monster speaks.
I know! I was surprised as you!
It was a delight to discover this in the book. The creature had a voice, something that has been taken away from them in many movie adaptations. In fact, they're beautifully eloquent. They learn different languages and learn the rhetoric to argue their position to Victor. Definitely more on that later on. Right, now let's get into the reanimated meat of this subject. I want to start off by simply describing Victor Frankenstein as unbiasedly as possible. By explaining
that he's a selfish, irresponsible cretin and he deserves all the suffering he gets in the book because he brought it on his own head.
I didn't do a good job there, did I? Okay, I'm gonna hand this over to somebody with a little bit more chill than I have right now. Take it away, me from the past. The Doctor's first action after creating life isn't a triumphant "it's alive" and declaring himself a god. It's to hide himself away, horrified, now, at his actions, abandoning what is basically his child, terrified and alone with no understanding of its existence or the world around it. It is other humans that first attack and abuse the monster, but it was Dr. Frankenstein that left it to that fate.
Sweet kid, work on your editing.
So Victor decides to make life, does so, and takes one look into their watery eyes.
They've literally just been born, of course their eyes are watery!
And runs away like a big baby. Comes back, sees the creature has left, and basically thinks, great, no consequences!
You better not be expecting any Father's Day cards, Victor.
Now, I want to be fair. I clearly don't like the character of Victor Frankenstein, but I also wanted to search for an angle I could look at this that would work in his defence. While writing this video, I began to really appreciate just how much the 1931 film truly codified our concept of Frankenstein. You and I are so used to the sympathetic performance of Karloff, imparting the lesson of just be kind to your abomination against God and things should turn out alright. Victor is not from this era. He is from an era when things like animal abuse and child exploitation were an accepted part of society. Only in his era, people didn't even have the decency to pretend they cared about those things. And you know how our culture has this strange relationship with a person's attractiveness and a person's value as a human being? Well, the Regency period was wild about that. The concept of being able to see a person's heart and soul within their eyes is something that, in the 1800s, was a legit belief, and when Victor didn't see what he would consider that essence of humanity in the creature's eyes, this legitimizes to himself his abandonment of them. But in my 21st century brain, whenever I read this part, I can't help but remember this joke from Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Stay away, you're unattractive.
You wound them up and let them go. You created life and then discarded it, leaving them without an anchor.
I mean, even in the 19th century, that's not great. That's not great, Victor.
Even this argument is refuted in the text itself once the creature returns. And here is the biggest problem with Victor Frankenstein: his contradiction. He often refers to his creation as a fiend or even a demon, inferring that he sees them as innately evil. No good to be found here. But he never takes responsibility for his part, not just creating life without any guidance, but for the actions that being partakes in, which is hugely hypocritical.
If the creature is fundamentally wicked, you made them. Any actions they take is your fault. And if they are, as you like to call them, a demon, well, then they can't not do evil. And again, you made them.
In the words of Jim Stephanie Sterling, Victor Frankenstein wants to have his cake and it too. He claims he has no duty to the creature, denies they have any form of humanity akin to a literal devil, and yet blames them entirely for any and all of their actions.
Which is it, Victor? Are they a monstrosity incapable of weighing up the concepts of good and evil? Or are they not? And then the murders happen.
It would be disingenuous if I tried to frame the creature as simple, innocent, and a helpless victim. They are the conflict that drives the plot forward. By which I mean they fridge Elizabeth on her and Victor's wedding night.
Yeah. Also not great.
In fact, we could have a whole conversation about the cavalcade of corpses that fall between these two. But that isn't this video.
And plus, you know, it's Halloween. We've all got places to be.
So the creature does have blood on their hands.
And yet I am compelled to defend them, so here we go.
In fiction, particularly classic fiction, monsters tend to take on a metaphorical role. Whether we intend them to or not, they can end up embodying our greatest fears. Looking at the roster of Universal's classic monsters, each one could be interpreted as some great societal terror the audience might be feeling at the time. The creature from the Black Lagoon can be seen as a fear of the unknown wilderness. The mummy can be the anxiety of Westerners worried that there might be some consequences to plundering other countries' historical artefacts.
Can you imagine?
And then there's Frankenstein's monster, which on one level is a cautionary tale of man's interference with the laws of nature. But while you're reading the book, you realise the true importance of the creature as a character. When they are born, they have all the comprehension of a newborn, but all the capabilities of an adult. They are, at this point, a blank canvas on which people, society, humanity can apply its best or worst qualities to.
And now, if I may, I'd like to spin off into my own little tangent. Thank you. I love how dramatic the creature is about everything.
For them, every event is a do-or-die situation, and they've got the vocabulary to back it up.
I have love in me the likes of which you can scarcely imagine, and the rage the likes of which you would not believe.
I love it! Should be used for one of those inspirational Joker memes, the ones that have quotes that have nothing to do with the Joker.
So, cast off into the world, more concerned with aesthetics than Pinterest, they manage to educate themselves, learn how to converse with others, not just in one language, and this allows them to talk and bond with the kindly old blind man. Yep, he was part of the original book, and a pretty integral part as he represents pretty much the only example of kindness the creature experiences. And so, with a combination of education and compassion, they feel that, just perhaps, if they are able to accept themselves and how they look and respect themselves for being a fully fleshed out person despite the disadvantages of their birth, perhaps the world can too. But even that hope is ripped away from them with encounters with other human beings, and after this they are resolved that Victor is to blame and that they must hold him accountable. If violence is necessary, they won't and don't hesitate to use it.
You might notice that that is how real life cycles of abuse can start and continue.
The creature pleads their case to Victor and wants him to make them a companion. Create another life, now with the knowledge that their existence would be as painful and devalued as the creature's, but thinking that, because of that shared misery, this companion would have no choice but to remain with them for company and affection, visiting the same cruelty they've experienced onto another being. Victor begins the undertaking but decides to destroy it as the creature watches, and so the creature decides to kill Elizabeth on her wedding night to Victor.
One hurts the other, hurts the other, hurts the other. On and on. And never mind who gets caught in the crossfire.
On and on this goes, until their story comes to its inevitable end, with the creature and their creator floating away on a piece of ice.
Because this video was really about climate change the entire time! I tricked you all!
Okay, so maybe Frankenstein isn't about climate change. Or, I don't know, maybe it is, and so many readers haven't caught on to this metaphor, and I am the greatest literary theorist ever. But here, 20 odd years into the 21st century, it's hard not to see this. This is a story about an uncaring creator, focused on their nebulous version of progress, leaving their child to deal with the repercussions of their actions. And when there's any attempt to hold them accountable, they call their opponents millennial snowflakes.
I'm paraphrasing. Slightly.
So, after 200 years since its publication, this book still has a resonance that can be felt even now. I repeat, I am not trying to diminish Karloff's creature. After all, it has clearly tapped into something. In the same way, audiences wanted to be bitten by Bella. Hard. We want to be the person who would show Boris the kindness he deserves.
So, why the video?
I said at the beginning I wanted to delve into the relationship between Victor and the creature. But what motivated me? I sat down to watch 2015's Victor Frankenstein, and oh boy, it made me so mad. Victor is remade into an eccentric yet charming Doctor Who-style hero, with his pretty little twink boy assistant, Igor. Together, they build the creature, and when they finally make an appearance...
For this is not life.
They've been devolved into yet another mindless monster.
A fiend, or demon, if you will.
They even do the looking into the eyes bit, but in this film, it's completely justified. Then at the end, Victor is still alive. This is framed as a plus for the story, and he's ready to do it all over again, seemingly not learning the damn lesson of his own movie's narrative.
Okay, alright. Here's the point, okay? Here's the point. And you are all the way over there. All the way. Over there. So yeah, I'm not a fan.
The film completely misses or ignores the point of the text they're cribbing from to make a more palatable storyline for Victor, with original characters inserted to make him seem not as bad in comparison, and regresses the creature once again to a silent monster to be destroyed by our so-called heroes. For me, the biggest affront of this film is the inclusion of the character Igor. I'm guessing you already know that Igor is not in the original Mary Shelley book. He was invented for the Universal movies. That's not really my problem. My problem is, in the 1931 movie, his name wasn't even Igor, it was Fritz. A character called Igor, filling the assistant-type role, wouldn't appear until 1939 in The Son of Frankenstein, and was played by...
Oh. Hi, Bella.
So, there you go. Hollywood can't even get its own fanon straight. Over the past 3 decades or so, in film, television and theatre, the creature, who had too often been seen as a silent character, have been rediscovering their voice. Robert De Niro's creature actually had a voice. Sheila Henley's creature regained their emotive language, and the movie I, Frankenstein made some choices. However, some don't see it that way. In 2018, The Sun newspaper published an article titled Frankensteins, claiming students are more and more empathising with the creature and labelling them snowflakes because of this. This was very quickly and very hilariously lambasted on social media, and the head of PR, Andy Sylvester, posted a gloriously disingenuous statement in which the paper tries to dishonestly frame the context of the piece.
Okay, I know it's The Sun, so it's only technically a newspaper, but you still know how language works, Andy!
And then plays the victim of unfair criticism for their actions.
Quite ironic, innit?
At any rate, Mary Shelley's renowned work clearly still holds a fascination and continues to have relevance after 200 years. A story about a monster who is more human than their human creator. That might have been a hot take in the 1800s, and yet it has taken us that long to truly appreciate it.
For me, I'll always prefer the person who wanted to change things for the better, rather than the monster who created them. Happy Halloween, everyone.